In the early days of the Solidarity and Compassion meetings, which started 3.5 years ago, we had several interfaith meetings where we invited teachers from different religious and spiritual traditions. And that was especially in times of crisis, where there were fires and mudslides. There was the shooting in Charlottesville. There was a lot of social anxiety and uncertainty. And now we are again in a time of crisis of a different sort. And so I wanted to thank our panelists today for coming. And I wanted to briefly introduce them. There is Reverend Julia Hamilton, who is the lead minister of the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara. Scott Klassen, he is an Episcopalian minister and has very much engaged, especially in the dialogue around climate change. And then there is Lane Clark, and he is a part of the Quaker community, the Santa Barbara Religious Society of Friends. Alexis Lutsky joined us. She is a mentor, educator, guide, and facilitator who works to support cultural restoration through listening and mindfulness practices. And then there's our dear friend, Suken Danjo, or we call him here Danjo-san. He's a Rinzai Zen monk and head priest in his monastery outside of Hiroshima. Miyuko will translate for Danjo-san. Even though we can talk quite well together, I think giving more of a talk is easier with having Miyuko's translation. And here is my husband and co-conspirator, sometimes reluctant co-conspirator, but nevertheless, Michael Carney. I think you probably have been at some of these events, but just in case you don't know me, I'm a psychologist and meditation teacher. I'm mentored for the past 17 years by Jack Kornfield, and I have a special interest to bridge Western and Buddhist psychology and find ways we can use these practices to relieve suffering. So we are coming to our first question to our panel. And I wanted to ask everybody the same question. So the question is, what helps you and gives you strength in this time when you may be deeply scared and where you may be even worried about yours and your loved one's life? Maybe I say it one more time. What helps you and gives you strength in this time when you may be deeply scared and where you may even worry about yours and your loved ones' lives? And I was wondering, Julia, would you like to unmute yourself and speak?
Sure. What gives strength in times of deep worry? And my screen has this kind of disco thing going on, so I hope it's not bothering anyone too much. I've been trying to kind of read up on what people have experienced who've gone through hard times before, either reading accounts from 100 years ago or just other hard times. And one of the pieces of wisdom that I'm holding on to is the need to slow down our sense of trying to project too far out into the future. That we are in this space, this kind of bubble space, and we're taking it day by day and moment by moment, and that if you try to spin out too far down the road into too far into the unknown, it's this kind of attempt to control what is uncontrollable, and letting go of that need to try to imagine too far down the road, but really focusing on what is present right now. What is the community that I'm in right now? Who am I with right now? My daughter and I, we read the classic Tolstoy story, The Three Questions. I don't know if anybody has read that recently, but it's a good one for this moment, where he focuses on these three questions of what is the most important time, who is the most important person, and what's the right thing to do, right, are the three questions that he asks, and goes through eventually coming to the realization that the most important time is right now, because it's the only time in which we can act. The only time in which we have any agency is right now. The most important person is the one that you are with. And the most important thing to do is do as much good as you can for those that you are with. And rereading that was a really good reminder of what we have control over and what we don't have control over, and letting go of that which we don't and focusing on a purpose in the moment.
Thank you, Julia. Julia, would you unmute Lane?
There you go, Lane. I'm tossing you the baton.
Thank you. And thank you for organizing this evening, all of you who organized it. It's so beautiful to be with people together, even in this odd way, to think about what is the meaning of this time and how can we be together in different ways. I think for me, what first came to mind with this question was the Quaker idea of right relationship. However we define that, I think it's often defined as an attitude of gratitude. The right relationship being, our relationship to the divine, or our relationship to the world we live in, comes down to gratefulness. There's always so much to be grateful for, that we have lived so well up until now, that we continue to live, that we have breath, that we wake in the morning the next day. And another place where I think I connect with this from is I've had the privilege of living in Ghana for years, and then repeatedly over the years. And there is a sense of gratitude that I get from the culture there, that one of the most common greetings in the morning, you'll say, hello, how are you? And the response will be, Yami Adom Mehoye, which means, by the grace of God, I'm okay, I'm here. And it doesn't matter what religious background the person is coming from, whether it's Christian or Muslim or a traditionalist, there's still this sense that looking towards grace as why we're here, and that we should be grateful for it. So there are a lot of other things I could say to this question, but I think I'll leave it there. There's so many different practices that I think in this field of people present, we could probably share our different practices for a long time, but I think the goal of getting to that attitude of gratitude is what I want to share the most.
Thank you, Lane. Julia, would you unmute Scott?
Lane, I want to thank you so much for that. And I want to thank all of you who are gathered here. It's an incredible community. I've always loved the events at Trinity and all the work that Bradley and Michael are doing. It really is a beautiful community that we have gathered here. There are three things that that are specifically helpful for me as an individual in this time. I find that that first of all, paying attention to nature, paying very specific attention to nature. So watching the buds on the trees in my yard, or watching the moon rise 2 nights ago. Did you guys see that? Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful event. Also, there's a family of nuthatches that is nesting in our backyard. We've been watching them. Those specific things make a huge difference to me and help open me up to gratitude. Similarly, at this time, I have 3 young boys who are go crazy, and it's a challenge trying to meet their needs, but it's also a huge gift to me. So the second practice is paying attention to them, specifically to what they're going through, to our time together, really putting my attention on them right now, like in each activity, in those moments, like an hour ago when I was I took the kids out of the bath, and I was putting the towel around them and wrapping them up and holding them close, and little moments like that really, those help me stay mindful and increase my gratitude. Then the third, which is less, I guess, sexy or attractive in general, which is, I believe, is routine. For me, finding some sense of routine is, and it doesn't have to be a daily routine. It's more of kind of like a broad scope of, okay, today is Wednesday. I'm going to know that today is Wednesday, and then there's certain things I'm going to do on Wednesday. There's certain ways I'm going to go, and for me, my routine in the morning begins waking up just before the mission bells, and I take my sacred text, I take my Bible, and I go sit and open the window and listen to the mission bells, and then I do a reading. And just having those little routines helps me connect and enables me to face the broader issues and work in our community.
Thank you, Scott. Would you did you understand the question?
Yes.
He understand.
そう。すべては私たちの深い心の中に、私はあなたのことを本当に心から愛してますというその気持ち、それと感謝しますというこの気持ちの2つの意識がとても大事です。
So, 訳していいですか？
はい。
So let me say to you all that is two things. The most important things are experience of love that we all have. I want to remind you that we all have love inside of us, outside of us. And secondary, and this is a sense of gratitude. That's we all are capable of saying thank you, and a feeling of gratitude to everything. And these two, I want to remind you that we are capable of this.
私は5年前に、肺炎になって入院したことがあります。
So this is I'm going to bring my personal experience that some of you know that I got a very severe pneumonia and hospitalized and almost crossed the line of near like a death and dying experience.
39度から40度の熱が10日間続きましたけど。
This was my journey that 10 days of kind of holding my high temperature, 10 days experience.
医者はその後、もうあとは最後残るこの強い薬でないと治らないかもしれない。だけど、薬に負けてあなたの命が奪われるかもしれないと医者は言いました。
So there is no medicine at this point, and I need to. A physician told him that there is no medicine unless if I starting to use a strong medicine to fight with the pneumonia, but I need to tell you this a side effect might take your life out from this earth.
私はその後一生懸命にお経もチャンティングしたり、 マントラも唱えたり、ひょっとしてイエス・キリストの言葉を唱えたら元気になれるかな。イスラム教徒のコーランの言葉を唱えたら元気になれるかなとも思いました。実際にそれやってみました。
So I was kind of moved to the desperate state that as I chanted, Buddhist chants and Islamic chants and Christian prayers, and desperately focus on my prayers. And
それでは熱は
again,
全然下がりませんでした。
the temperature still went on high, never came down.
その夜、私は自分の両親の夢を見ました。
So that night, one night, I had a dream of my parents' visit.
おじいさんやおばあさんやありとあらゆる友達の夢を見ました。
So grandparents showed up and my old friends showed up.
で、その時に私の心は感じました。僕はみんなから愛されていたんだということを深く感じたんです。
So this was the moment of almost an awakened experience that is the deep, deep feeling of being loved.
その後、とても感謝の気持ちが呼び覚まされました。
And kind of the gratitude, deep gratitude, gradually filling up with deep gratitude.
高熱の中2時間ずっと泣き続けてました。それは感謝の涙で泣いておりました。
This was kind of within the high temperature, and 2 hours I sobbed with this experience of the deep gratitude and experience of being loved.
その後、朝方に私の体温は37度の正常な体温に戻りました。
Then sort of the temperature the next morning after this experience, temperature returned to the normal.
で、私はその時に、大きな気づきがありました。今こうして元気なのは、その自分の深い感謝の思いや、自分はみんなから愛されていたんだという深い思いにたどり着いた時に、自分自身が本当の自分に、帰ったというのを感じております。
So this experience that almost is like a death and dying, I'm almost standing there, crossing the line, maybe not. And near this experience that, was awakening experience that is, deep experience of being loved and deep experience of gratitude. It's like spring water. This is a never ending, the kind endlessly kind of like a spring water. It was my awakening experience, and still I'm holding this everyday life, that experience of being loved and experience of gratitude, like a deep well coming from inside of me. And I'm saying is inside of all of us that this well.
この瞬間、私たちは本当に深い感謝の気持ちを得る体験が、みんな世界中の人たちができるというこの喜びを感じてみてください。
This is the time that I invite you. This is a time to get in touch to this well. Well of wellspring of being loved, wellspring of gratitude.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Danjo.
So beautiful to hear you, Danjo-san, and to hear your story and of awakening and love, and to have that 600-year-old tree behind you. I love hearing what everybody's shared so far. Thank you. And as someone else spoke, it would be awesome if we could have an opportunity to hear everybody here, because I know we each have the things that help us in times of a lot of fear. And so I'm representing connection with the natural world as a spiritual path, and so it feels important to acknowledge our Chumash brothers and sisters whose land we're on here in Santa Barbara, if you're here with us in Santa Barbara, and who have been here for thousands of years. And I guess one of the things that helps me, I actually was just thinking, you know, being in a body that can surrender to gravity is really helpful, because gravity is one of the things that is so trustworthy. When things are uncertain, you know, the earth has never dropped us. And I'm so deeply grateful for that. So when I get destabilized, I feel my body, make sure I can feel my feet, and like a 600-year-old oak, you know, send some roots down. So I love, Scott, the nut hatches in your yard. And that certainly for me is paying attention, just generally paying attention. And for me, that's sometimes easier to do without a lot of the noise of that is, you know, in my mind or with the humans. And nature is such a generous place for the kind of magic and creativity and generosity that is our nature as human beings. And today I was in a little bit of a melancholy mood this morning, and I you know, just feeling feeling melancholy. Here's melancholy this morning. And I went out and I'm going to share this stick that I found. I don't know if you can see it, and some people, you might not be on video, but it's growing in a circle. And so, you know, one of the things that nature is such a good mirror of is our unpredictability. And, you know, change is really the constancy of the natural world. And so that helps me so much also realize that, Julia, like you spoke, you know, not getting too far ahead of ourselves into the future. In most cultures, you know, but pre 1,000 or 2,000 years, we weren't a linear thinking species. We weren't oriented toward progress. We were cyclical and following the cycles of the seasons and the moon. And that is really helpful for me, is to remember that long, long, long arc of time, and the certainty of change, and being surrendered to gravity, and also human contact, and, you know, the basics. And thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Well, we are wondering if there were questions from the audience to us panelists.
So I want to ask the panelists and everybody, this has really been wonderful. Where is God in the pandemic?
Very good question. Who of the panelists likes to speak to that?
Well, I did have one thought in my mind, and I think for me, where I see God in this pandemic is how it is awakening our compassion for people who are suffering, whether it's for people we know or people we don't know who are less fortunate than us. I've seen such an awakening of compassion, and to me, that is God at work.
Well,
thank you.
I had a thought. I just, you know, that was beautiful, Lane. I in terms of God, you know, and my sense really is that God is everywhere, and in the virus as well. And my sense is that as humans, as a species, you know, for quite a while now, we haven't chosen to live in a way that honors all beings. You know, we're really at that threshold now of a crisis on our planet. And so I think of the story when God says, you know, when there's a person who needs saving, you know, drowning, and a raft comes by and the person says, no, I don't need the raft, you know, God is going to get me. And then later a helicopter comes and he says, no, I don't need the helicopter. God said, you know, I have strong faith, God is going to come. And after he or she died and spoke with God, God said, well, you know, and he said, where were you? You forsake me. And God says, you know, I sent the raft, I sent the helicopter. And in a way, it feels like this is, although, you know, a very painful one with a lot of suffering, we have the opportunity to because it's through our human experience, we're human centric, but to understand the impact of so much of what's been happening for a long time.
I'd love to add something. First of all, I think it's absolutely incredible that right now the entire population of Earth is going through something all at the same time. And we have this potential to recognize and live into our interconnected and our interdependence in a way that I don't think we ever have before as humanity. So to me, I see God in that connection. I also see God in the Judeo-Christian tradition. We talk about there's the scripture of Job, in which Job is suffering greatly, and the divine appears in the world, appears and redirects Job to when he's considering his own suffering and his friends are not much help to him, to consider to widen his perspective into knowing when animals are born, knowing what is going on in nature, knowing what is going on in the broader universe, and living into that. So I see God in those greater connections.
Thank you. Julia?
And I wanted to jump in and kind of weave in a couple of other questions that I saw come up through the chat about how do you help someone who's not in that place of gratitude? How do you help someone who's suffering? And because we're in this place of like Scott just said, of this like radical interdependent moment around the globe where we're all in this awareness of this moment, and at the same time we're in this radical isolation where we are all living in a smaller world perhaps than we've ever lived in before. We have no idea what the experience is like for someone else, right? We only know our experience in our house or our bubble, and other people are having radically different experiences. And we can't know what's going on for them until we begin to open up with some curiosity and wonder and get in a place where we can actually communicate. We can imagine, but my life having an elementary school kid and 2 working parents is very different from someone living alone who's older, who hasn't touched another person for 3 weeks, which is very different than somebody who's living on the edge of financial stability and has lost their job and is wondering how they're going to put food on the table. So we both have this global awareness of interconnection and a radical difference in our experiences. And so when we're with somebody who is really in the throes of suffering and of not being able to come to that place of gratitude, I think we have to be really careful about listening to their experience and not wanting to push them too fast into what our experience is or bring our experience into the room, but really allow them to be where they're at and provide that listening ear and that compassionate heart for them to ground themselves in what's real for them. And then again, just kind of helping. I was at this trauma and resiliency workshop the other day and really grounding it in the moment, in the physical. You know, what can you see? Where are you in space? We're living in this virtual world as well as a physical world. Talk about another bifurcation, right? Getting people out of the projection of the virtual connection and reminding them they're in a room, they're in a body, they're on the earth, and regrounding people in those physical realities can be really helpful if they're starting to spin out somewhere in an anxious or unhealthy place.
Anybody of the panel who wants to say, contribute something else before we close?
Rodley, I have a very short few words, a quote from a colleague of mine, the Reverend Wayne Arneson, one of my favorite closing words, and he says, "Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone."
Thank you.
I think we might have time just for each of, Lane, if we just want to each do a few words, and then I'll do a very short closing.
Well, one thing that just is touching me, thinking about the glasses and the idea that God is everywhere. God is also in the virus. God is in the crisis. This crisis has given us new lenses to see the world as interconnected, see all of us as living through this one thing together, and also the stories that are coming out. The lens of the crisis is showing us we do live in vastly different realities, as Julia pointed out. And if you're paying attention now, you can start to hear about the poor people of the slums of India flooding out to their hometowns because they can't survive in the city with the shut-in laws. And, you know, these different realities are coming into sharp focus now. And I'm taking great hope that this new lens is going to bring us to a different reality.
Anybody else before we close? Scott, I think might have to have.
I would just like to say thank you all so much. It's an honor to be with you all, and I'm grateful to share this life with you. I'm grateful to share this time with you.
Thank you. And maybe I wanted to say before the closing that part B of our interfaith and interconnectedness Solidarity and Compassion evening is coming on May 13th with Rabbi Cohen and Reverend David Moore and Raja Prana and Tepo Tulku and others. So stay tuned, but back to Alexis.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for being here and for speaking, those of you who spoke, and for the listening. And there's so many beautiful things written in the chat bar. So I'm sorry we don't have an opportunity to share all of the wisdom, the collective wisdom here that's shared around how we meet these times. But if you have an opportunity to read through that, please do. And one of the, just the last pieces that was spoken, one of the questions that I was holding there right before, in the minute before the closing, someone asked, how do I actually use this time to settle into a different pace? And so I've heard that being spoken as, may we see with new eyes, may it take us to a different place, may we, you know, be changed by this experience so that we come through and there's more care for people and planet. And I just want to appreciate that question, that we hold that question as a sacred question without giving the answers right now. How do we do it? But that together we're listening into what can each of us do to really allow ourselves to be changed by this time. So the song I want to offer is, I learned through dear people who sing bedside with the Threshold Choir locally. And I offer a song from a hospice tradition because it so brings the care of the preciousness of the moment, and that we are with a lot of endings right now. And how do we stay with an open heart with endings? So this is a song that I ask everybody to sing, and you're not going to be unmuted. You're going to be muted. So you're just going to hear yourself and anybody else that's in the room with you. But I hope you join with me so that we move that vibration through our bodies. And the song is very simple, and the words are, we have only this moment. We have only this moment. We have only this moment. Will you take my hand? So we can actually even try putting our hands out. And if you have screen view, you might actually notice that your hands might touch the hands next to the people in the screen, if you can see people. And for those of you on the phone, just imagine there's a lot of hands. There's over 70 of us here. So it goes like this. We'll sing it 3 times. We have only this moment. We have only this moment. We have only this moment. Will you take my hand? That's it. We have only this moment. We have only this moment. We have only this moment. Will you take my hand? We have only this moment. We have only this moment. We have only this moment. Will you take my hand?
Thank you again, everybody. Thank you, especially Alexis, for this song. This was so beautiful. And let's keep singing on May 13th. And actually, just for those who don't know, every Wednesday in between, Danju-san and Moko are with me here on Wednesdays.
Yes.
So evenings at 7. Will next week, all the weeks in between until the May the 13th. Miyoko, thank you. Miyoko-san will be
宮子さん
here.
ありがと
いや、こちらこそ元気で。またね、来週。
う。
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you, Michael.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Rodri.
everybody.
Thank you.